Hi, I'm Doug, your tech support representative here at Atlantic British. In this video, we're going to go in a little more into depth about a common issue with the Discovery 2s, which is a shuttle valve failure on the ABS system. Now, normally when these do fail, or if a fault code is applied, it'll turn the three lights on, which will be your hill descent, traction control, and ABS light, which are affectionately known as the three Amigos. Now, this isn't the only reason those three lights can come on. Any fault in the ABS system is going to cause them to come on. So obviously, should they come on, it's telling you the fault code has been set. You want to take it to a shop, or if you already have a code reader for the ABS system, you can pull that code. And if those codes indicate shuttle valve, we're going to go into a little depth here as far as what you may need to do to repair that. Now, essentially what I have broken down here is the three different levels that you can get into on this system. A lot of guys will initially start with just the shuttle valve replacement. Now, this is not actually the valve, but these are the actuating solenoids that open the valves, which are built into the hydraulic block. Now, you also have the center block, which holds all the solenoid coils which activate the valves, which are built in and sealed in the block, along with your electrical connectors, both external and internal. As you can see, that's what your shuttle valve assembly plugs into. Now, one of the issues is simply just the failure of one of these solenoids, which the replacement of just this part will be able to repair it. And you can replace this without having to take all the brake lines off of the hydraulic block, and we're going to show you how in a little while. The next step would be if you pull the connections and you see corrosion built up on any of these connectors or on the two pins inside, then you're going to want to replace this block as well. It's just like anything else. Once the corrosion is started, you can clean it off, but within a couple months or a month, it's right back and the lights are back on. So the only proper way to do it is to replace the unit. Now, we have the shuttle valves available separately. We have the shuttle valve actuator and the block available as a kit should you find the corrosion in there. And then the next step would be to have to replace the hydraulic block. Is if you remove the shuttle valve, which is right there, the two solenoids go down through two sealed pistons, which are the actual base of the valve itself, and those seals can leak. So if you pull this shuttle valve off and you find brake fluid built up on both sides, those pistons are leaking, your best repair is to replace the hydraulic block. Now, I make these available. We can get these on a special order, and you would just talk to your salesman about that as far as getting this part. What you're going to need to do any one of these repairs, especially if you're going to be taking the block off, you'll need both an 11mm and a 13mm flair wrench. Once you crack the lines loose, they do spin out relatively easy, so you can save yourself some time, and then you just switch over to an open-end wrench to spin the nut off. A 10mm wrench, you can use an open end, or I like to use a ratcheting box wrench, and that's going to be for the three nuts that hold the hydraulic block in its cage. And then, of course, a 4mm T-handle Allen, or you can use a regular Allen wrench, and that's for the three bolts that hold the shuttle valve actuator in place. And then I like to use I might need a screwdriver, because the first time taking those connectors off, sometimes they're going to be a little tight, and you would just depress the tab and pry out a little bit with a screwdriver, and they'll pop right off and come off. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you some background on how you would replace these items and hopefully get your three Amigos off. The thing I'm going to mention, though, if you need to disconnect the brake lines on this, of course you're going to need also to bleed the system. Now, on the Discovery 2s, to completely bleed the system on these, you're going to need a diagnostic tool, either a Hawkeye or an Autologic, or even through the dealer itself. The reason being is that the system needs to be cycled by a tool so that it gets all the air out of the hydraulic block, and then it will also actually go into a power bleed as a three-step. Now, you can get back about 3/4 of your pedal just by doing a regular bleed, but it still isn't going to be correct. You're still going to have somewhat of a lower pedal, and it's going to pump up. So to bleed them completely, you are going to need a logic tool or some diagnostic tool that has access and can run the brake bleed function on these vehicles. Just something else too, those of you that notice that this is a used unit, we don't stock these here. We get them through an order basis. So if you did notice, we do not sell used parts. This is just here for demonstrative purposes. Alright, so first thing I generally like to do, and this will just give you a little bit more working room. It's not a necessity, but I like to pop off the intake tube. And what that'll do is just basically open up the area so that you're not going to be bumping into things and just makes access and visibility for the bottom of the hydraulic unit that much easier. So we're just going to simply loosen up the clamp, and then the clamp that holds the back line that goes to the idle air control, you can just take the corner tip of your screwdriver and get up underneath that, and that just pops. Slide that up out of the way, pop that, take that off, and then we need to disconnect the wiring off the mass airflow sensor, and you can just squeeze the tabs and then lift a little bit with the screwdriver, and that'll come right out. We've taken the clips off. And we'll set that aside. Alright, so now you got a nice open area here. So obviously the first step, what we're going to do, we want to be able to lift this block up so that we can see the shuttle valves on the bottom. We're going to disconnect the two electrical connectors. You have a press tab on top here that'll lift this little arm, and we'll give a wiggle back and forth. And like I said, they can be a little tight, and if yours is real tight, you can take a screwdriver blade, insert here, and twist, and that'll push that out. Then you have a tab on the back side of the single wire connector. It's a little difficult to get at, but it can be got at. What you have is a squeeze tab right there on the back side, and you're just simply going to squeeze that with your finger. Now's the time when you want to look for any green corrosion or buildup inside of either one of these connectors, and then also look inside your electrical connectors on your actuator block. Any corrosion there, at this point, you want to get an actuator block. If it looks good and clean, then the next step is going to be, we're going to take a look at that shuttle valve actuator. And this is at that point now where you're going to put a 10mm wrench on these 3 bolts, and we're going to lift that up. Now really at this point, all we need to do is disconnect the brake lines. We got your 2 feeds in the master cylinder, and you got your 4 outlet. You could do several of one thing. If you're not confident of knowing exactly where it all goes when it goes back together, you can number the tubes with a piece of tape and a marker. You can take a picture with your smartphone. There's a number of different things, but whatever you need to do just to remember that all the lines go back in their appropriate spots. Obviously, the reason being is each one is controlled by the control module. If you're going down the road and the right wheel locks up, you don't want it mistakenly operating the left rear wheel. So they all have to go back where they came from. Alright, so that's your next step. And you can see they're even sized, so it's very hard to get them mixed up. So we're just going to take the 6 lines out, and then from there we'll just unbolt the 3 small nuts that lock that in place. Alright, before I disconnect these, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to be able to access the shuttle valve actuator switches without having to disconnect the lines. And all you have in this that holds this in place is 3 10mm nuts on rubber bushings that support it. Obviously the rubber bushings are there simply for vibration because you have a pump on this unit. If you mount them up solid, you're going to feel it when that pump goes off. So we're going to take the 2 back ones out. Now brake lines are essentially made of a double layer of malleable steel. Malleable being bendable. Obviously that's done as a safety issue, so in case of an accident you have a lesser chance of them being severed. Now the one in front is in a slotted hole, so you can effectively lift that up and you've got enough slack. Don't be afraid to force it a little bit. And then slide the back ones out. Now, the stud is mounted on a boot, which slides over a stud as part of the unit, so I would suggest at this point take it off and set it aside, because more than likely you're going to knock it off anyway and it's going to disappear down underneath, and you certainly don't want that. And there you are. You put a light down here. You only have 3 bolts you need to remove from underneath, and those are the 4mm. And with that, this shuttle valve, which is just the plastic actuator switches, can be removed. And if you want, you can lift up a little bit, because you definitely want to see if the 2 pins in the connector inside have any corrosion on them. If they do, then you want to go the add-on kit that's going to add the front block, the solenoid block, onto it. Alright, so we've shown you how you can access that, but now we're going to replace this. So I'm going to bend this back in place. Now, if you're doing just a shuttle valve, you can essentially do the same thing. Just push it right back in place. You might need to put a little twist here or there, or bend. Put the 2 back studs in place first. They wiggle around so you can get in there. Lift this up. Slide the front piece back on the stud. I'm going to need to push it in tight. There we go. That's popped in. We line up with the slotted hole and drop that in. So now you would just put the 3 nuts back on, plug in your 2 electrical connectors, and you'd be done with just the solenoid switches. But now we're going to go a little further, and we're actually going to remove this block. Take the brake lines off. It's usually recommended you go with a 6-sided flare nut wrench. This way there's no damage or lesser damage to the lines, and it'll actually disconnect easier, less distortion to the nut, gives it less of a chance to grab the line when you break it loose. So we're just going to use the flare nut wrench to break it loose. It looks like all the rest of 13mm. I'm just working under the line. Be afraid to give it a little bit of snap. A quick sudden movement is enough to break the corrosion down that's built up between the line and the nut. So you can see these have just broken loose nice and clean. And this is the first time this has ever been taken apart, being this is an 02. You're basically looking at a system that's been together for over 13 years and still comes apart nice and clean. Alright, so then we're just going to take an open end wrench, take the rest of the lines out, and then we can just simply grab the block and pull it right out of the slot. Alright, so at this point we're just going to spread our lines a little bit. Lift the front. We're going to take that bushing out, set that to the side, slide the 2 rears out of the hole, and with these I'm going to do the same. I'm going to slide the 2 bushing mounted studs off their posts. Let's put all that aside and just get this up high enough. If you have some kind of a helper nearby, now's a good time to put them to work, just to hold the brake lines off, because you're going to hold this up and then you actually have one more electrical connector, and this is the drive circuit for the pump. And you got to lift up on the tab with one finger and pull with the other hand. And again, it's been in there for 13 years, so it's not going to come out easy. So essentially, here's the finished product. We put our lines back on. They're tight. Our 2 feed lines, they're tight. Our connector down below for the pump itself, and then your 2 connectors on the face of the hydraulic unit. And just as a reference, and I don't know if you noticed it earlier, you actually have a label right here on the replacement unit showing front, left, right, rear, so telling you where these lines go. So should you be in question, you can follow them back and find out where they're connected just to verify it. But we have everything good and tight. The 3 nuts that hold the mounts in place are there. Everything's good and tight. So essentially at this point now, we got to fill the master cylinder, We're going to do what they call a conventional brake bleed. We'll have somebody to pump the pedal, or you can use a pressure. I don't know if you've ever used the brake bleeders, pressurized brake bleeders. They attach to the top of the master cylinder, and with fluid apply pressure to push it through. And then we're going to have to hook up a diagnostic tool and do the power bleed. When all said and done, hopefully we should have a good brake pedal and no more 3 Amigos. Again, I want to note, this is not the only cause for the 3 Amigos. Any ABS fault will kick those 3 lights on, so it's always best pull the codes first. Wheel speed sensors, circuit faults, things of that nature can also turn on those lights on. So, when you're ready to repair your 3 Amigos, if you want to put them out, and we found out that your shuttle valves are the cause, call any of our knowledgeable salesmen at 1-800-533-2210, and thanks for watching.